Hey everybody, it's Chris and I am back again to do another pour with you guys today. Today I'm working on a Lazy Susan. This is actually part one of two videos. At least I think it'll be two videos. I'm afraid that it'll be too long if I do all of the things that I want to do with this project in one video. So this is going to be the first part. I am starting with my Lazy Susan. This is a 17 3/4 inch Lazy Susan that's I purchased those from Home Depot, which is a local hardware store in Iowa. And they are about 1 1/4 inches thick, I believe, 17 3/4 inches around. They start out as a pine disc, and then I use the Zinsser 123 Bullseye Primer, and the top surface and sides get 2 coats of that, and then the bottom gets 1 coat. I lightly sand it when it's all dry, and then I tape off the bottom. I usually will let these sit, I usually do the first coat, let it sit for 45 minutes to an hour, do the second coat, and then I let the whole thing sit for about a week to make sure that it's all cured out. The can says that it takes a week to reach its complete hardness, so this one's been sitting a little bit longer than a week. I try to prep them ahead of time so that I have them ready to go. So the colors that I've chosen today, my thought process is that I want to stencil on top of this with a Mandala stencil when I'm finished, and probably in gold. So that kind of guided me a little bit on my color choices today. I'm using Deep Violet, and this is a Liquitex Basics paint. I'm using Permanent Blue Violet. That is an Amsterdam paint. Metallic Purple is one of the Artist Loft colors. I'm also using Mineral Blue, which is a Soho Artist Loft color. Metallic Blue, which is another Michaels Artist Loft color. And then Payne's Gray, and I believe the brand of Payne's Gray I'm using right now is Soho. My goal is to have about 13 ounces of paint, I believe, should cover this, and I shouldn't have to fight it, hopefully. So I'm using 3 7-ounce cups. My center cup will be pretty much filled, and then the side cups should have about 3 to 4 ounces each in them. So I'm just going to layer my paints in. I'm thinking that I will start with the Payne's Gray and then work my way up. Payne's Gray is one of my favorite colors to use because you get such cool effects from it. And I'm using metallic colors, not necessarily for the metallic part of it, but more so for the color itself. I don't know that my metallic's going to show up that much. This is the Mineral Blue. I think this is going to be really pretty colors together. So, and then the Metallic Purple. And again, I love sparkle, but I generally will put my Rust-Oleum glitter paint when I do a Lazy Susan or coasters. But I decided this time that I would stay away from that since I'm going to do the medallion on the top of it. And then this is the Deep Violet. And then I think we'll do one more layer in the side cups, and then we'll just concentrate on the center cup. So all I have in my paints today is my pouring medium recipe and my paint. I don't have any silicone. I did spray the cups with WD-40 silicone spray so that the paint will release. So hopefully we get some cool effects from the paint. And then the Metallic Purple. This one's going to be really full, and I can see this is going to probably splatter when I turn it over. I think I want to add just a tiny bit more to these outside cups just to make sure that I do have enough paint, because this is a pretty big round, so I want to be sure that it's covered and so I don't have to fight it, because it's not any fun to do a painting if you don't have enough paint to cover the surface. I think sometimes you can end up losing really pretty things that you have going because you have to stretch it beyond what it should be stretched in order to cover. Okay, so I'm going to move my paints out of the way. And then I'm going to start by flipping this cup kind of towards the top. So my thinking is that I'll pull it down. Okay. People make fun of me all the time when they watch my videos because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. But holy cow, that's so pretty. I have to pick this up and show you guys a little bit closer. Isn't that amazing? I don't know. Always amazed. But such pretty colors. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this one here and this one here. And let me make sure I've got you guys in frame. But I've already got some really cool cells, and that's just because of the paint and the pouring medium. So, okay, I'm going to move this one over just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to pull this one down. My goal is to try to kind of get down to the bottom. So I'm going to try to pull this carefully so that I get all the way down to the bottom with this cup, or at least most of the way to the bottom. And what I'm doing is I'm just slowly pulling down. There we go. And I could have released a little bit more paint on my way down, but that's okay. I'm just going to tip it back just a tiny bit so that I don't lose everything over the edge. I definitely could have pulled it up a little bit more. That's okay. I'm just going to run it down here a little bit to get my paint back kind of towards the middle because I don't want it to all run off the bottom. But holy cow, are those some amazing colors. Wowzers. Okay, so we're going to call that good, and then I'm going to pull this one. And you can see that almost all the paint comes out of those cups, which is the nice thing about using the WD-40 spray. Okay, so there's our colors. And I really hate to waste that paint that's on my hands. So I'm just going to kind of touch it to the sides there. Grab a paper towel real quick. I'm just going to torch it and get rid of some of the air bubbles. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pick this up and kind of move it into a circle and try to get this surface covered first. And it looks like my WD-40 must have got right there and right here. So I'm just going to touch this and kind of rub that a little bit and see if I can get that to stop resisting, because right now it's resisting the paint color. And then I'm just going to kind of run that over there to the edge. Let it go over. And that's looking pretty good. Alright guys, I've taken my phone out of the little cradle, and hopefully you guys can see some of these details. The colors are really pretty together. And then as it dries, it'll definitely dry deeper than what it is right now. I'm trying to keep my phone angled so that I don't get the glare off of the window. And you can see some of that metallic in there, which is quite pretty. So we're going to let this sit for a few days, and then we will come back and do the stencil on top of it. So stay tuned. Hey guys, I am back to do part 2 of this Lazy Susan. I poured it almost a week ago, and now I've got a stencil. It's a mandala stencil that I have positioned, and what I did was I laid my stencil down and I took my clear ruler and measured from all 4 corners where I have it marked. And then I put some tape down, and then I used a Sharpie marker, and I just marked right on the edge of the stencil as well as onto the tape so that I knew where the stencil should lie. And then I took the stencil off and I lightly sprayed it with this Loctite adhesive. Now this is a temporary adhesive as long as you spray it quickly and put it down on the surface. If you wait like a minute, then it becomes a permanent bond. So this should just be a temporary adhesive right now. So I sprayed it, I laid it down gently, and I just kind of tapped it down gently. But before I did that, I made sure that I lined up my marks where I have on the stencil. And then the next thing that I want to do is to start stenciling the pattern in. And As some of you already know, I really love this Extreme Sheen 24 karat gold. And generally I am kind of a silver girl when it comes to like the purples and the blues, but I think the gold is going to be really pretty with this. So I just have a paper plate that I put a little bit of the paint on, and then I've got a paper towel here so that I can kind of rub it off a little bit because I want my brush to be kind of dry. I don't want it to be super wet, otherwise it's going to seep underneath this stencil. And I want to try to keep this as crisp as I possibly can. So I bought these stencil brushes at Walmart, and it was just this big set. So I'm using one of the bigger stencil brushes, and then I also have a little bit smaller one so that I can get into some of the smaller areas. So all I'm going to do then is to gently tap into my paint and then come over here onto the paper towel. And you can see that I don't want a lot of paint on that tip of that brush. And then I'm just going to gently pounce. And it's better to start light and go back and add more paint in. So I just want to start light, and then I'm going to come back and add more paint into my brush, and then come back and do the same area. And I'm just doing a up and down tapping motion. I don't want to swirl it because then it can go underneath the stencil, because I know even though I have this adhesive on here, I know that it can still seep underneath there. So I'm trying to keep my brush pretty dry, and then I'm just doing the pouncing up and down. So I'm going to continue doing this until my pattern is filled in, but I'm not going to make you guys watch all of this. So I think you can kind of see how I'm doing this, which is the up and down tapping motion. And I just want to make sure that my pattern is filled in nicely. So I like how that looks. And if it's a little bit lighter in some areas, that's okay too. We just want to be sure that we can see the pattern and know that that's the shape that's supposed to be there under that stencil. So I'm going to continue working on this, and then I will come back when I'm finished and show you guys what the finished result is. And we'll take the stencil off and see how it looks. So stay tuned. Okay guys, I have finished stenciling all of the gold on here. I did set a timer and it took me about 17 minutes to do all of it. So it is kind of a little bit time consuming, but it looks really cool. I really wanted to take the stencil off before I started recording just in case there were issues, but I kind of want you guys to like experience that like wow moment when we see what it looks like. So the directions on the can say to peel it from the corner up. So I'm just going to gently peel this away, and I just pounced up and down. And I tried not to go underneath my stencil, which is very hard for me because I do tend to want to get done quicker and try to see if I can do a different motion to get it done faster. But okay, so I want to kind of be careful down here in this corner because I can tell that my paint was a little bit grabbed on there. Wow, that looks pretty cool. So this was a pretty dark pour for me. But I think once the resin goes on there, it's really going to be quite stunning. So I'm just going to gently peel off my little pieces of tape here. So the second part is done. We'll let this dry probably for, I think, a couple of days. Honestly, it's probably more than enough since it's just a light coating of gold paint. Hopefully you guys can see the sheen on this. It's when the light catches it, it's really pretty. So we'll let this dry a couple of days, come back, and I'll show you once it's resined and put together. Hey everybody, I'm back to show you the next part of the Lazy Susan. I've got it poured, and then you saw the part where I stenciled it. This is the back side. You can see that my painter's tape is on here. So I leave my tape on until I do the resin, which is my next step, and I'll do that right after I show you guys how I did my Lazy Susan mechanism. So this is the mechanism that I purchased at Home Depot, and what I did to measure where the mechanism needed to be placed was to make a template. This is just a piece of craft paper. I traced the Lazy Susan, cut it out, and then I just simply folded it in half and then into quarters again, and that found my center point. And then I just laid my Lazy Susan mechanism on top of the paper, and that's where I made my marks of where the holes needed to be. And then I placed this onto the wood, and then I simply drilled holes right through where my markings were. And then I was able to place the Lazy Susan right down over the top of those markings. And then I just attached my screws. And then they suggest that you put oil in the bearings, which let me show you to see if you can see that. Hopefully I can get a good enough angle there. So there's bearings down here in between these two pieces. So I just use the treadmill silicone lubricant to put oil in there because that's something that I already have. And then later I will put some rubber pads on these just to protect the surface. But for now, I'm going to leave those off and I'm going to go ahead and do the resin. And I've got a couple of pictures that I'll try to insert within this portion of the video so that you can kind of see photos of when I did these steps with the mechanism. I just want to pop on real quick before I mix my resin and show you guys a little kind of tip, if you will, for your resin. I find that I have a lot of issues with bubbles, and it's been really cold here, obviously because it's winter in Iowa. And so my resin seems to be really thick, and I use the Stone Coat countertop resin. And this is the resin, and then this is the hardener. So part A is like super thick. And what I found is if I'm doing a really large batch, I might just throw both of my jugs in a sink of hot water. But if I'm doing a smaller batch like today, I put my part A resin into my measuring cup and I've got it in a hot water bath. And so this is my part B, and I've got that warming up as well. Not only does it reduce the bubbles that I get, but it also makes it much easier to spread. Okay guys, I've got my resin mixed up now. I just follow the manufacturer's directions and I mix it for 3 minutes. I set a timer. So I usually mix up about 10 ounces of resin for a Lazy Susan. I'm just gonna start kind of dumping in the middle and it'll start to level out. And pardon me for my really beautiful gloves that I have on right now, but resin, I've discovered that resin is not really my friend, so usually I wear a respirator when I mix. Well, I was wearing the respirator when I mixed it, and I usually wear it while I'm putting it on, but I don't know that you really want to listen to Darth Vader's sister while I'm doing this, so I don't have the respirator on right now. But I would caution you that if you are using resin, you probably should wear a respirator with it. You should definitely make sure that your skin is covered. That's why I have these really long gloves on, just to make sure that my arms are protected, because I find that my reaction to it is that I itch really badly and I get hives. So I try to keep my arms covered. I try to always make sure that I'm wearing gloves whenever I'm, even when I pour it into my cups to measure, I really try to make sure that I've got gloves on even at that point, just to be sure that I'm completely covered. So I'm just continuing to spread the resin around. Generally, I have another pair of gloves on top of the dishwashing gloves that I'm wearing, just so that I can kind of peel off and remove a layer if I need to. But due to the fact that I'm trying to film and I'm in a hurry because I'd already had my resin mixed up, I'm not doing that part of it. All right, boy, I had a feeling this is really going to be beautiful when it was resined, and I'm hoping that I can get good shots of this so you guys can see how pretty it is. I used a lot of metallics in the pour, and I was really hoping that those would show up, and they certainly have. So I'm just going to use my glove, and I want to make sure that my sides are covered as well. So I'm just going to kind of go over the sides, and I just kind of push some of the resin off over the edge, and then I just rub it with my hand. And you can feel, you'll feel that it's smoother and your hand just kind of glides around if you've got resin on it. So I just want to make sure that I have the edges done so that it looks pretty from all angles. And then hopefully I can take my camera down and show you guys how beautiful all of the metallics are. I was really concerned because when it dried so dark, and I thought, oh my goodness, what did I do? But this is really amazing. I really love this mandala on here too. Okay, so I can feel the edges are nice and smooth now, so those are all coated. And then you can probably see some bubbles on my surface, which I had said They're much less, believe me, than what they were if I wouldn't have heated my resin before I started. And then I'm just going to use my torch and pop those bubbles, and then I'll give you guys a close-up look. Right. I would definitely wear a respirator when you're torching as well. So that's all I do when I resin my pieces. This will get moved over to the side. I have a shower curtain up above that I pull down over the top and kind of tent it in, because I do have kitties and they tend to like to come into my room where I have everything set up, of course. So I will tent this, and then probably tomorrow afternoon when I get home from work, I will take the tape off of the bottom because it comes off a little bit easier if the resin's still a little bit soft. But other than that, that's all there is to it. And it just gives it such an amazing, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, it's such a depth. And I think even with the medallion on here, it really makes it amazing. So I'm going to take my camera down. I'm hoping that I won't get too much of a glare off of the window, but I really want to try to capture this while it's wet for you guys so you can see it. The cool thing about resin is that it looks like this when it's wet, and it looks like this when it's dry, because it's just so beautiful. So I'm going to pop my camera down off of the tripod, and hopefully I can give you guys some close-up looks. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you later.